My name's Brian O'Cam, and I'm an Associate Professor of English. My research focuses on medieval literature written in Old English, the language used in England between the 6th and 11th centuries before the influence of French arrived with the Normans in 1066. Lately, I've been researching bilingual proverb collections from the late Old English period, nearly 1,000 years before the invention of internet memes like Punhusky or a woman yelling at a cat. Back then, scribes and artists integrated memorable and funny animal memes into books designed for Christian learning and worship. Before looking at animal memes from the Middle Ages, I need to say something about medieval literacy. Reading and writing in this period were skills possessed chiefly by church ecclesiasts and a handful of secular elites. Further, knowing how to read did not guarantee that one knew how to write. These were often separate skills for those who possessed them. Since most of England's early medieval population was unlettered, they relied on oral traditional modes of knowledge transmission and storytelling. One art historian has argued that the long blank scroll connecting the upper and lower registers of this image represents the verbal transmission of knowledge by authority figures to novice monks drawn from the common ranks of society. King Edgar, shown here with a writing quill suggesting literacy, worked with these 10th century bishops to recruit novice monks into monastic houses. The liturgy prescribed by St. Benedict's rule was structured by the daily ritual singing of psalms in Latin and required monks to memorize the entire Psalter by heart. Recruiting monks then faced a major obstacle since most people spoke English and knew little or no Latin. Since Christian worship in this period entailed the strict use of Latin, training English-speaking monks in that tongue was vital to the Benedictine Reformation's success. This meant teaching students based on short texts they already knew, namely Old English proverbs. So what's a proverb? A proverb is a short, idiomatic saying marked by alliteration, rhyme, and balanced phrasing, or a mixture of all three. These features enhance their memorability, allowing proverbs to impart wisdom to others. Some proverbs you may already know include, "Let sleeping dogs lie," "The fruit doesn't fall far from the tree," and "The blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice." Fusing concrete nouns with sound devices allows proverbs to function as verbal icons or word pictures and promotes their circulation. Distilling wisdom into pithy forms designed to be shared, proverbs could go viral in the Middle Ages, like internet memes do today. They could also be used in all kinds of situations. Take, for example, "The blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice." If uttered while picking berries, this proverb offers a literal lesson about how to test fruit for ripeness. But it registers figuratively among Black communities when used to affirm self-esteem in listeners grappling with colorism. Proverbs, in short, fuse visual elements with memorable verbal frames adaptable to multiple contexts. Of course, not every proverb was rooted in lived experience. Several from the Middle Ages were derived from popular beast fables inherited from classical antiquity. Aesop's famous race between a personified tortoise and hare became the proverb "slow and steady wins the race" over time. One reason for this is that monks distilled stories like these into memes inscribed into the margins of medieval books. Added to some blank pages in a composite manuscript, this collection of Anglo-Latin proverbs may show how this happened in the 11th century. These proverbs were added to blank leaves joining the manuscript's two parts, thus bridging two separate books that were sewn together at Canterbury, where the Codex was made. Part 1 is a Latin hymnal with monastic canticles. Part 2 is a bilingual grammar and glossary authored by the monastic educator known as Ælfric the Homilist. It's clear that this manuscript was used in a bilingual classroom because Old English glosses are written for students in between the lines of its Latin songs. This explains why the proverbs were added to this codex when it was fashioned into a single class book. Proverbs enabled instructors to teach grammar while imparting moral and social values central to the community. In turn, animal proverbs offered novice monks links to their secular lives and backgrounds, thus paving the way for their studies in a foreign language. Now let's look at two animal memes from the Durham Hymnals proverb collection, starting with the 6th pair of Latin Old English sayings. The Latin corresponds to the Old English proverb, "Godier bethona se hund tham refna giveth," which translates as, "It's a good year when the hound gives to the raven." One scholar suggests this proverb has literary origins, linking it to Aesop's fable of the dog in a manger that refuses to share grain with a horse even though he won't eat it himself. Thus, this proverb probably has literary origins. Yet my research suggests the idiom is related to the saying, "when pigs fly," a proverb that parallels both the meaning and syntax of the Old English phrase, "when the hound gives." Both idioms use animals to comment ironically on an impossible situation. It's a sarcastic way of saying, "that'll never happen." But in what circumstances would medieval people have uttered this animal proverb? Without a time machine, we can never be certain. Fortunately, medieval artworks provide some context to fill the fragmentary historical record. In the Middle Ages, word pictures like this one gave unlettered persons visual triggers to activate verbal wisdom. This image from a deluxe 14th century manuscript commissioned by a secular landowner visualizes the dog proverb in the bottom margin of the page recording Psalm 94. Despite being made nearly 200 years later than the hymnal from Canterbury, this Gothic Psalter's illustration contextualizes the hymnal's verbal animal meme as an agricultural one for a secular patron. Notice too how the book's ornamental frame divides the image of a peasant sowing springtime crops into panels resembling punhusky, albeit along a horizontal axis. My eye is drawn to the middle, where a peasant laborer is sowing grain, an activity linked to the spring and the start of the agricultural year. This mode of time reckoning accounts for the dog proverb's beginning, "It's a good year when." The image further contextualizes Aesop's selfish dog who won't share grain with other animals. Perched to the left, behind the peasant, a second raven steals kernels from the farmer's seed bag as his distracted dog chases a different bird away at the far right. What interests me is this visual proverb's placement in the lower margin beneath Psalm 94. The dog proverb's inclusion in a verbal collection designed for teaching monks Latin and an illustrated psalter commissioned for a secular landowner, I'd argue, confirms the proverb was both literary and common, familiar to people from different walks of life, and thus well suited to bilingual instruction in monastic classrooms. Visual elements also accompany the second animal meme at the bottom of this page. In 11th century English, "Nu hitis on swinis doma quath se churl sat on ephorus regia." Now it's in the pig's judgment, said the churl sat on the boar's back. The witty scribe here writes the noun phrase, the churl, directly above the words boar's back, a gesture foregrounded by an ornamental bracket. Its placement at the bottom of the page echoes the placement of the Luttrell Psalter's animal meme at the base of its page. Though this may be coincidental, a different manuscript copy of Alfrich's grammar records yet another animal proverb at the base of the page. Clearly, medieval animal memes belonged at the bottom of a book's page instead of somewhere else. Under ultraviolet light, an Anglo-Latin joke in faded ink by a late 12th century scribe appears in the bottom margin, this one uttered by a toad suffering from an unfortunate encounter with a gardening tool. I suspect whomever wrote, "As the toad said to the rake, I'm undone by so many masters," was overwhelmed by the Latin glosses crowded into the margins of the grammatical dialogue above. But that's just speculation. In any case, these proverbs and their regular placement in manuscripts reveal how monastic scribes played with viral animal memes in the English Middle Ages, a pattern of behavior still with us on today's internet. Thanks.